Hey there, fans of the Super Fun Time Show. We have an awesome surprise here today because right now we want to talk about Survivor 44, but we're going to bring in someone who is considered well, maybe not professional, but definitely an expert in the game for sure. And this is Karla from season 43, the badass lady who got 5th place and almost took the money. But hopefully we see her again in the future of the game. How are you doing today, Karla?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Pretty calm, pretty chill. Great day.
Yeah, you're feeling the peace right now, feeling the calm.
I am, yes. I'm not traveling. I've been on the road for so many months with work, and I finally get to relax in Delaware for a bit. So
Absolutely.
really happy.
Yeah, but it looks like you're going to be on the move again, right? You're going to a Survivor event next week, I think.
Yes, next week I'm in Boston, then in Jersey for a few days, then I'm road tripping to Toronto, and then I'm doing the finale in New York. So
Oh, that's all. I think
back on the road.
I think I'm actually doing the finale in New York. Now that I think about it,
Ooh,
yeah, either that
okay.
or the Philly one, the Bryson Wen thing,
hmm
and
hmm
the thing in December, the Hearts of Reality, which is going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm doing that as
I
well.
know. I got pretty stoked about it. At one point, I looked at the guest list and I was like, "Wait, hold on, is all of Coco going to be there?" I was like, "What?" Because it was like James,
Oh
Lindsay,
my God.
Cass,
Well,
you, uh,
do we know about Ryan yet?
not Ryan. Okay, he's the only one missing.
Okay.
Geo as well. So it's 5 of the 6. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Ryan's got to not be a loser. Get there. I don't know Ryan. I don't know if he's a loser. I'm just saying he should show up.
Well, I do know he's training for the Paralympics, so
Oh,
and doing really well. So he's probably super busy with
oh,
that. But who
Florida's
knows?
a great place to start training. I don't know. Awesome. Okay, so
Right.
we're gonna dive into here real quick. We're gonna talk about some Survivor, of course, and we're gonna talk
Okay.
about the current season right now. We're gonna talk a little bit more about Survivor 43 and some of the dynamics behind all of that Karla absolutely can give a lot more insight into. So this past episode,
Awesome.
the big thing here, you saw it last night, right?
Yes, I did. I
Absolutely.
did.
What do you think overall? Good, bad? You know?
Really good episode. The edit kind of threw us off, I
Mm-hmm.
think. Um, it's really great to. I loved Carolyn's story. Loved Frannie's win. Loved that you kind of didn't know where the votes were
Mm-hmm.
going, and what was going to be played. So it
Absolutely.
was it was great.
So who did you think was probably going to go based on the edit?
Um, I thought it was either going to be between Danny, Kane, or Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Danny obviously put a big target on his back the week before. Jamie at tribal or at the challenge was like, "Have you heard?" Or Frannie was like, "I haven't heard your name." So that's always a clue that I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know about that. And then with Kane, I have no idea why he. For me, I was like, there's just something about at the beginning, him looking for the idol,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of focus on him, as if we really wanted him to find the idol for some reason. So
Mm.
kind of picked up on those clues.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. The Jamie thing, by the way, that is like there's such devastation in the whole Jamie thing. I don't know if you feel it too. The idol. The idol, because obviously by the end of the episode, it is no longer Jamie's. And that crushed me. We've been
Yes.
screwed. We've been screwed.
A screwed of entertainment, but in a way it saves her embarrassment
Oh,
because
absolutely.
imagine you trying to play that in real life and then just being like, psych. Oh, heck no. I'd rather it disappear and her never, be embarrassed than play it and then be like, nope, it doesn't work.
I agree with you because here's the deal. Like, Chekhov's gun, any good story, you introduce a gun in the first act, it should be fired by the third. So that's where
hmm
it's disappointing because we would have seen an all timer. And I'm sure you caught it. Like CBS, even the way the editors put it up on the screen, Jamie's gloating about how somehow she still has her idol. And then all of a sudden they popped up one fake, they did her dirty. They did her dirty. But it would have been epic. And but I love Jamie so much. I follow her on social media. She seems genuinely just like the physical manifestation of a rainbow. And I love her. I didn't want to
Yes.
see her get embarrassed, but it's tough as a viewer. You like to see these things.
So positive. There's just like a ray of sunshine that is just like emitting from her. I love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so not so much rays
Okay,
of
let's do this.
sunshine is starting off the episode. We have, all 3 tribes. They have 3 people apiece. So you're like, okay, the Ratu Soka war is kind of over because Tika's in the middle, but it's only 3-3-3. So then you're like, okay, for you, Karla, you're looking at that and you go like, all right, where do you go from there? Like, what is, I guess it depends on what tribe you're in, but what was your read initially?
We need to stop working with tribal lines.
Mm-hmm.
You're merged. I think that was my biggest reaction. And it's funny because I was sitting with James and Bryce. I had them both over last night.
Nice.
And we were just like, start blending in. There's no more lines. Like, if you could try to make like Frannie tried, right? With telling Danny, we need to look out, for the Tika 3.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work, but you can't do that when you're scrambling to try to figure out what the votes are. I would have at that point have already, though it's similar to the way that Jesse and Cody just all get, flipped on Bessie. But that's my first reaction.
Of course, yeah.
Tika, though, sitting pretty, I think it felt similar to Coco after they had already tried to come after us, and then Jesse and Cody flipped, right? And then we were like, oh, we're the needed numbers right now, and we had 4. So it felt very, like, I could see how they felt. Like, we're in that position of power. We can make the votes work. But then as we, get later on in the episode, it gets complicated because even if your own tribe can't be decided, which is in a way happened to us as well with like the Janine and Ryan vote, Cass was really pushing for Ryan, whereas some of us were like, no, we got to go with Janine.
Yeah.
So if you can't come together, then you get something crazy like this tribal where you're just like, but eventually they did, but
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting to see it all.
No, absolutely. And what you had pointed out, I thought that was a moment in the episode, the Eureka thing with Frannie in particular, when she mentioned Tika.
Mm-hmm.
When Frannie, like, there's one moment in Survivor history I always think of it for this, which is, I don't know why, Survivor Amazon. It was Rob Cesternino, who's basically the king of Survivor media now. It was down to, I can't remember. It was like, Rob's boys and Jenna Maraska's girls, essentially. And they were fighting over Christy. Christy was right in the middle. She's like, I don't know who I'm going to go with. And then Rob just goes to Jenna and says, how will we vote her out? And that's what happened. And I was like, oh my God, Frannie's doing the Rob C thing. And I was terrified. And just because I love Tika in general, particularly Jam and Carolyn as personalities. Carson, I'm sure he's a good dude and he's playing well. But
yes.
You have your favorites, right? So I was a little nervous. Particularly because I think that one of them is going to win the game. I think one of Tika probably will. Mm-hmm. But Danny, straight it away, like you said, and said, stick to the tribal lines. Let's not get creative in any way. And I thought that was a little disappointing. So I happen to share your sentiment in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fascinating. Actually, Frannie, kind of pivoting a little bit. Wow. Frannie's already very quickly piling up the wins. That's impressive, huh?
She is, yes. And actually just looking at the lineup that we have right now, I can see, Lauren's won 1, Frannie's won 2, Danny's been pretty close. Mm-hmm. I guess really depending on what the challenge is, because you can have someone like me injured win, 2 challenges, but she is killing it. So I think that given what she's doing now, I can see her win more and hopefully breaks a record. Because I think the most we have in the new era is 3 immunity wins.
I think you're right. 3 or 4, something like that. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4, definitely. I'm trying to recall. I was looking at this beforehand. I know Cass is up there. Ricard's up there.
Yeah, and I think I saw an interaction with Ricard that said that he's tied with Cass and Owen for the most, mm-hmm. I think. So.
Either way, let's hope Frannie just shatters that entirely.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. That would be fantastic. Actually, kind of playing off of that is, hopefully she lasts long enough she can win those things. But realistically, right now, where you see her game currently, how far do you think does she have an expiration date in the near future?
I do not see an expiration date in the near future for Frannie, only because it seems like socially, she has really good bonds with people. I don't feel like, unless it's interesting because when you're on the island, for example, like there's, especially with immunity wins, I don't think we were ever like, wow, this person is kicking ass. Like, we got to get them out. It really just depends on the level of threat they are. Mm-hmm. You could be a really great immunity win, challenge winner, but socially not have the game. So I don't know.
Mhm.
I think she's gonna go far because I think she has the best of both worlds. Do people catch up, and notice that? Maybe. But so far she's in a great position.
I think so too. I think she's doing well, and I'm trying to think of a comparison to your season, and I'm not sure who you would say probably fits into the wins immunity, but not social threat. I'm going to have to throw out the name Owen just because he was almost always on the wrong side of the vote, it seemed like. And just to be clear, I love Owen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but I think that she's on it.
Mhm,
Like she has, I think, the best read of the game so far in terms of where the alliance, the merge, the tribe is at, right?
mhm,
I don't think anyone else in the game. I think if she uses that information correctly and learns how to pull at people's strings to try to get votes to happen, then that's a different beast, right?
mhm.
But if she sits with this information and doesn't do anything, then I wonder, right, like where she sees herself and where others see her. But if she's masterminding these next moves, I think the next vote is critical to see how Frannie does.
I agree. And actually, just sitting here, I was thinking about this, and you said, Franny, depending on what she does in the next vote, how she can kind of possibly mastermind, made me think about the vulnerability probably happening right now within the tribe. Because in the last episode at the tribal council, Kane was voted out, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And two advantages, well, one was used and one was gone, even though it wasn't a real advantage. Jaime believed she had a real idol that was in Kane's sock when he was voted out. So now Jaime lost her safety blanket. Lauren had an extra vote that was used in
Mm-hmm.
the tribal council by Jaime to total futility because they were afraid of knowledge is power, which is not even a part of the game. But there's so many advantages. I guess I can't really blame them.
Yeah.
So really, I guess the question is in my mind, and I don't know if you agree with this, is it a race for someone to recognize or to try to some degree to work on the remaining Ratu and maybe get some of these more vulnerable people to their side? Now they don't know they're that vulnerable, but if they even just talk to them, maybe Jaime and Lauren are like, we need a safety float.
Um, I think, yeah, I mean, it could be, it's always about numbers, right? But it's always also about threat levels. So you could have great numbers, but all be threats, which is great because you need shields anyway. But there has to be a great combination of both. I I have no idea what's gonna happen. I don't know how they're gonna do it. I know that the promo is like, we need to let go of these tribal alliances. In what direction? I have no clue. It can go anywhere, honestly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a person they could probably point out to that is maybe Jam Jam. There was a period of time where I think Ratu said, Jam Jam's like the new boss or whatever. And I'm curious if there's a little truth to that.
Yes. However, though, I wonder if Franny's read on where Tika's at will spoil, right? And be like, they're playing the game. So don't think of them as, numbers, but think of them as threats. So I wonder how that works out. But once again, right? If Jam Jam and or Carolyn and or Carson, if they have great social game, they can then obviously try to maneuver their ways out of that narrative that could be played or thrown upon them. It all depends on what the narrative is for each remaining tribe and how they decide to break up. Um, it'd be interesting. I
Absolutely.
wonder if they would also be like, let's pretend to not get along and then just somehow, like let's all infiltrate smaller tribes or smaller, voting blocks, um, to get our way to the end. Who knows? Who knows?
Actually, that's what originally my interpretation was of not the last vote, but the one before when we had Tika split their votes, even though they were all on the same page. I was like, are they playing like 3D chess right now where they're trying to get
Right.
into kind of both sides of these warring factions? And if that's true, that's that's
Yes.
that's great. Yeah,
Yes. Super smart.
absolutely.
Work in the
But
system.
you have to give credit to Jam Jam. Like I know they really highlighted it, but it seems like if you write his name down, you go in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, listen, yes,
Yeah.
that's great storytelling. Um, clearly it's included for a reason. It's important, right? Because when you are out on that island, everyone gives a confessional that is, I mean, not saying that that's what they take out, but some of the questions that they want you to say is like, speak about your game, what's happening right now. And if you are telling this narrative, it's important. If it's being aired, I think it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
It's true.
there's a lot of power to his words right now.
I very much agree. I mean, I think for people who are probably are professional writers and they're used to putting together story structure, they probably can predict the winner of Survivor pretty well. So, and although last season no one seemed to really get Gabler, but I mean, myself,
Yes.
I'll tell you right now, before the finale started, I felt like Nostradamus. I've never been more right in my life for a while. I was like, listen, Carla's out at 5 because Jesse's not going to want to have it that threat. Jesse's going to be out at 4. Gabler's going to beat him at fire. And then 3, I was like, okay, Owen's going to be a 0 vote finalist. Love him, but sorry. And
Wow.
then I
Yeah.
said, Gabler gets 1 pity vote and Cass wins it all. And I couldn't have been more wrong at that part of it because you just don't know sometimes. But what we definitely realize in hindsight, like you were saying, is when they include these things, it's really important because it's everyone has their story of the game. It's just a matter of which story they're telling or whose story they're telling. And right now, you may be right.
Yes. Yes. And it's, think about, right, the longevity of the story. Think about, you know, who's at the forefront typically. I mean, confessionals matter, I think, from my experience. Um, yeah, but we have multiple really good stories right now. Obviously, a lot of great stories happening, a lot of decision making that isn't just one person, which is fascinating and great to see. But we'll see how it develops. You
Absolutely.
never
Yeah,
know. You never
we
know.
never know. Like right now, I'm in a conflict. I see Yam-Yam's winning story right now playing out, but I also
Yes,
see Carolyn's winning story.
Carolyn's.
Let's talk about Carolyn for a second. How much do you love Carolyn? Do
Listen,
you like Carolyn?
oh my God, I love Carolyn. I think Carolyn's story is one that we haven't seen. It's super refreshing. She's entertaining as hell. Um, I think her story arc so far, right, is that of constantly being underestimated. Even though she's been right at certain, like especially at the merge feast, like she's been right about the way that people just they don't find her valuable, and they don't. Yes, they've
Never.
always been like, no, Carolyn, no, Carolyn, which can be foreshadowing, right? It could be like she has this, let's say she gets to the end, she has this wonderful story that she says, that she shares, like, you've underestimated me this entire time and look at where I am. So there's beautiful story unfolding right now.
Absolutely. I can envision her at Final Tribal Council talking,
I
doing
hope
doing.
so.
Oh, I wish. I like honestly. I hope all 3 of Tika's there, just battling it out. It'd be great. Not to
Yes.
say I don't love other people. I would love Jaime to bounce back from having a fake idol and have to jockey.
Yeah.
Heidi's really starting to. Her stock went down, but it's going back up.
Oh my gosh, I know. The way that, you know what's funny? Sorry, just to
No,
interrupt.
please, yeah.
The the way that they transitioned that idol hunting scene, it was very Danny Kane, right? Here's a little bit of Jamie. Maybe she gets a second one,
Mm-hmm.
But then out of nowhere swoops, here comes Heidi, and it's just like, I found it. And you're just like, what just happened? Because she was never a contender and looking for it,
Mm.
right? She just out of nowhere found it. Um, that is interesting editing. Only because it's kind of like, you just didn't realize she was kind of in the game.
Yeah.
And now, in a way, she's back in the game, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely. No, it's
yeah,
totally true. And I think part of that actually describes Heidi's edit in almost the whole season, honestly. I think maybe she got one scene in the first like 5 episodes where she was like, yeah, Danny, let's do it, and like that was it. Now she's found 2 advantages, or well, she did the key thing, like an episode ago where she found that
hmm
advantage and got to steal Lauren's vote and got to use that. And then
yes,
she got this advantage where she found this one too out of nowhere.
she's actually, yeah,
She's
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 got a
she's a
lot.
sneaky little lady. She's a sneaky little lady. She's getting up there. But I could.
Though I wonder what her social relationships are, right? Because you have 2 people who just try to get her out. Um, how is that going to look
Yeah,
next week,
it's true. Jaime put
right?
both those votes on her this past go around.
It sucks knowing that you are in a position where people don't like you or people want you out. That's just like the worst feeling ever. Um, Luckily for me, I only felt it one day and I knew I was going home. So I was like, let me just see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine being in their position and just being like, shit, there are people here still right now that don't like me. Two of them, I can't get both of them out in one day. How do you come out of that?
That's a tough one. And, actually, I had spoken to Gabler last week, and he actually touched on that for a second. He talked about jury votes and everything. He said Karla in particular goes, earlier that day, Karla comes up to me and says, Gabler, are you an honest man? And I said, I try to be, Karla. I try. And he's like, is it me? I think so, Karla. And then basically it's like, well, then that point, you probably already knew the deal. That's why you asked him. And that's why, from what I remember, the tribal council, that's when you turn into a live tribal. You threw Jesse under the bus. You ran over him.
No, it was a different day. Yes.
Which day were you talking about?
It was I was talking about Final Five. Gabler's story is from the day Noelle went home, because I was contemplating using my idol, but no one knew. People knew it. They had suspicions I had the idol, but because I didn't play it that day, some people like Cody were like, she would have played it. But that night, that day, it was raining, I remember, and the four were at the reward. I think it was Noelle, Jesse, Sammy, and Owen were at the reward. We were all bummed at the beach, and that's when I asked Gabler if that group was going to target me. And Noelle was for a bit until she decided to split the vote, which good thing I didn't play my idol.
Yeah.
But that was a day that then helped me also think of Gabler in a different light. And it was Final 8. At that point, I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I can trust what he says.
Totally different. Yeah, totally different deal. And I remember seeing some side scene where I think you were trying to extract from Gabler, about idol stuff. You were trying to figure that out.
About the beads?
Yeah. You were like, oh, whoa, they use beads? The beads are the idol?
Like,
no way. What?
No way. Lindsay and Cassidy were making beads for James' birthday. They must have taken them. Lindsay must have them.
Yeah, Lindsay must have been voted out with that thing. I love that. I don't know. That was a fun scene because I first got to see that today. I usually don't hunt for secret scenes, but I wanted to see more.
Thanks. Yeah.
Listen, you're special. I was willing to do that. Anyway, sorry. But actually, we went on a little diatribe, but all the way back to Carolyn. Back at Final Tribal, right?
Yes.
I want to see her sitting there at Final Tribal. I could just imagine it. I see her to some degree making a pitch, kind of like Gabler, a little bit right now, but hopefully a little more happens for Carolyn, I think, to get there. Like, I can see her holding up the idol she never had to use. I don't think she'll ever have to.
Ooh.
I've actually had this since Tika, and no one thought I even had it. I can see that happening, and I just, oof. It just excites me.
Yes. And I think that's I
don't know. Do you disagree? Do you think more needs to happen?
I think obviously in retrospect, right? Looking at my game and having an idol in hand when I wasn't really a threat yet, but though people were already talking about me, it's hard to, and I think this is, why the game felt very calm. Is you had 3 people in power with idols up until the final 6. 2, right? Because Jesse had both Cody's and his, and I had mine.
Yeah.
If I could do one thing back and change, one thing over, I would use my idol, even though I was safe, with the necklace around my neck, with the immunity idol, or, around my neck. I think that would stir things up. So I think sometimes similar to Danny, right? You need to know to play your idol if it will do something at the right time in return. I hope Carolyn, if she doesn't need it for herself, uses it at some point to make a big move. But also bust to Marianne. It's interesting, though. It's interesting because I feel like, I wonder, Bryce, James, and I were talking about this last night. It's like folks who are now filming for 45 and 46 would have seen a Gabler win. They've seen an Erica win. They've seen a Marianne win. What's the game going to look like now if people realize and know that even under the radar, people who play the game under the radar can be bigger threats than people who make big moves? How is the game going to change?
Honestly, that's very true. I mean, the formula. I did see someone say something particularly about 44, which I think applies specifically to 44. So I'll say that real quick, which is with so many advantages out there, it's kind of like basically it's a pull at the slot machine and you hope that you just don't get hit. And I think that's a good way to describe 44 in particular, although it's calmed down with the advantages a little bit. But 41 through 43, I think the game respects big moves. That's true. But you can
Hmm.
win being kind of low key in the majority alliance, voting right most of the time. And the key
Hmm.
is you really need to win over the jury at final tribal, it seems. You really need to be able to explain your pathways to the
Your
game.
game
You
and
really
your
need to.
read on the game,
Hmm.
right? You could talk about how you got there, but if you don't know where you fall in the grand scheme of the entire game, I think that can obviously that won't work. So
No, I think you need to be able to tell the jury domino. I mean, you can tell better that because you've been on the jury, right? You've been part of that room. From what
yeah.
I gathered, it seems as though you need to be able to tell the jury why dominoes fell to some degree because of you, or why you
Hmm.
dodged a lot of things specifically with intent.
Hmm.
You know.
Exactly. It's all about the intent.
Mhm.
It is all about the intent.
Like when,
Yeah.
particularly with Gabler's, when he talked about like, he's like, who was part of Ride or Die? I was part of the Baca Boys. Like I was like, wow, he really did show he
Hmm.
had 3 or 4 ways to get to the end. That's pretty impressive.
And and he knew when to step it down. He knew when he needed his shields to play a bigger game than him. Like there were, yeah, he knew how to explain his game. That's the crazy part. That we were just like, oh shit, you did all this. I didn't even know he was part of the Baca Boys or whatever. Not the Baca Boys, the Ride or
Oh
Die. I
yeah,
was
the
like,
Ride or Die.
what?
Yeah.
What is this?
No, absolutely. He obviously did great there. And Marianne, I think she won her tribal council, or she won her season
Oh,
at
for
that tribal.
sure.
I thought Mike was
Hmm.
going to win, and then it kind of
Same.
fell apart. Sorry, Mike. I love Mike. He's a nice guy. But Marianne, she
Yeah.
snatched it, and I was really impressed. Now, anyway, actually, kind of moving on a little bit more from there because I think we talked a lot about 44 and where the game's going from there. I do want to real quick just ask you a question. There's been a lot of cool people from 44 up to this point. Other people voted out. I'm going to try to pull Matt G and also Bruce out of the mix because they're pulled out of the game doing medical stuff. So
Yes, yes.
for people who had been voted out, who do you think was the bigger surprise they went out at the time they did? Like who maybe had a bigger projection in the game from what you saw in either the cast previews or episode one?
Oof. Um, I think I don't know why, but I was pretty shocked when Maddie went home. Very
Mm-hmm.
shocked, just because I thought that the way that she was playing very offensively and then also defensively, but she was playing hard to stay, and just hard, and she kind of knew where. I think she knew about Brandon's advantage, and it was just kind of like she's here to play.
Mm-hmm.
So for her to go home, so as the first person, being voted out, I thought she would have been in the long game.
Yeah, I think she's a pretty solid choice. I mean, especially during that row of women all being voted out in a row in
Hmm.
the beginning of 44. I think a lot of people were like, "Listen, let's remember that the OG who tried to prevent this was Maddie trying to get rid of Brandon. Unfortunately, he pulled out an idol, but Maddie knew enough
Yes,
to get rid of this guy and not go with this narrative of keep
exactly.
the tribe strong, whatever that means. Usually, that's kind of a default go to. I think tribes feel comfortable resting on. But Maddie gave it a shot. I agree, she's very good. But I think a lot of people were very good. So there's a lot of answers that I think would have been.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like Helen was great. Claire seemed like she was going to be awesome. Um, heck, I'm blanking out right now. But and Matt G unfortunately was pulled from the game. So I did see in an interview recently. Now that Kane's gone, it was like, okay, so did you know that the idol you had from Jaime was a fake? And when did you find out? Now he didn't comment on when he found out, but he's like, I'll just say this:
Mm.
me and no one at Ponderosa knew about it. So we thought it was 100% authentic, legit. And if that's the case,
Wow.
hats off to Matt G. He made a great fake.
Oh, for real.
That's that's impressive.
That is. Listen, I wonder when they found out. I can't wait to hear.
He
Like who was it that had to come in,
he was
and
holding
tell
his
them.
cards pretty closely. He's like, I'm not going to tell you how, but let's just say we didn't know at that time. So I can't wait. So actually, that's kind of I have 2-part question before we totally move on, but it links into your season, which I want to talk about. Which is first, I'm going to ask about production idols. This has been a kind of a hot topic. You go into the birdcage, you get a real idol, and then they give you a fake one too. Now, as a player, imagine that happened on 43 and you received one of these production idols. You play it, you get voted out saying, haha, idiot. You didn't get, you basically, that's not a real idol, but it looks as authentic as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to come with the note most likely of the real idol. Do you think
Mm-hmm.
there's an indicator that would like, do you think that's fair? Essentially is really what I'm asking.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think in the realm of Survivor, anything can go. I think if that's part of the game that they've created, that's great. Um, I mean, just like any twist exists, knowledge is power, anything that's pretty wild. That advantage that Sarah had, or where you could inherit the inheritance. What is
That was
that,
so
right?
overpowered. That was incredible.
So yeah, I think if that were to happen to me, it's a part of the game. I mean, unless it was thrown in mid-season, then I'd be like, what the heck is this? But because the game started off with that mechanic, it's new, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way that collecting people's beads was new and different.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, I'm gonna roll with it. Um, yeah. Right now, this moment is the first time I've realized I probably should have tried to make a fake with those beads. I
I
didn't
mean,
realize. I'm so dumb. You
especially,
never, yeah,
I mean,
whatever.
especially once, well, yeah, maybe when Gabler popped it up, you're like, okay, well, other people know about it. Maybe this is the time to hop on it, you know?
Yeah, but the hard part is, right, you didn't know who had or knew about the beads, and the beads are very distinct. So
Very true.
if I would have given someone a fake idol, and let's say they knew about the real idol and the kind of beads, yeah, it could have gone sour real fast.
That's true. Honestly,
However, this one
no.
is interesting because you have one reel that isn't that type of idol is fake to another
Mm-hmm.
beach. Like that was super creative the way that they did that. So
I agree with that entirely. I will say as a player, I would feel like this is tough because you're going to get voted out not knowing it was ever fake because there's like no hint,
hmm
especially the fake for Ratu. That one was like that like translucent symbol thing. It was like no survivor is going to be able to craft that. And it was a fake. I
yeah.
was like, come on, like it's clearly from production. It's not the Eliza. It's an effing stick. Like it's
hmm
so like I would believe that's real in a second, and I would get duped. Now I will say the one that Matt G made for Jaime looks pretty standard. As far as
hmm
fake idols go, it was a good one though, and so I have to give him major credit for that. Matt G, hopefully we see him again. Actually, you touched on exactly what the part two was. So we've had three different
Okay.
creative ways to get idols in the game. We have the cage
Uh-huh.
idols in the new era. We have the fancy bracelet beads idol that you were a part of and you successfully completed. And
Thank
we
you.
also
Thank you.
have the catchphrase idol,
Yeah.
which if you
What do
could,
I prefer?
yeah, what do you prefer? What's maybe one? What's maybe three? And as far as your ranking goes,
Bottom is the catchphrase for sure.
mm,
Um, I mean, if it's as easy as finding a freaking key and opening it up, the cage, it's hard though because I really loved the beads, just the storytelling around it and how I was able to get them. Was very creative.
mhm.
Um, I actually liked that better because it's there's no physical. Um, for example, with the cage, right? You could tell when someone's like messed around with it. With the beads, it's like you could keep it hidden really until you merge. So I would say one beads, two cage, three catchphrase.
Yeah. Honestly, good call. I mean, as long as you put catchphrase at the bottom, that was
For sure.
definitely my number one. I was like, what are we talking about? They're like, I'm as confused as a what was it? It was like
Goat on Astro
goat on
Turf. Yeah.
astroturf. I was like, oh my god, come on, man. And
And that's why I hesitated when I found the beware advantage. I was like, I don't want to say a phrase. Like, heck no. Let me not get it. But then
yeah,
I went back.
and then and I will say there's a little bit of strategy in that, I guess, where I think Mike was the one that did it, where he was like, listen, I'm gonna wait for the other two phrases. I'm not saying anything. And
hmm
that was smart, but it's terribly embarrassing. But you do embarrassing stuff to win the game, right? I would have done it
Yes.
begrudgingly. Anyway, bridging over to 43, I want to talk to you a little bit about this. So I
Okay.
want to talk a little more personal stuff because I know we only have like 10, 15 minutes, something like that.
hmm
Back at, Beach Life of Coco, one of my favorite things about this past episode of 44 is that we got to learn a little bit about like an off day when they're not actively playing. And I'm curious,
Hmm.
back on Coco, since I don't think we saw a ton generally during 43, who were
Yeah.
your homies on Coco? Basically, was the whole tribe? You have one or two you particularly dug?
Well, because I found myself in the middle of Coco, everyone,
Mhm.
I was with James, Lindsay, Cassidy, when all of Coco was together, right? Like that was the one group. And then there was, Lindsay, Cass, and I that was kind of separate from James when before we brought him in. And then there was Ryan and Gio, but then I went into the Ryan and Gio, and then at some point it was with Ryan with James as well. So I think I found myself more leaning towards the Lindsay, Cass, James alliance,
Mhm.
just because we were making things happen.
Well, okay, so
Yeah.
so then just to make a distinction, so is this purely from a game standpoint, or like they're like the people you enjoyed the most?
Um, Both actually.
Mhm.
Well, it's hard because when, let's say we had an off day, what we would do, typically this is what happened.
Mhm.
Gio and Ryan would go get food. They were looking for idols, but they would just go get
So they
food,
wasted a
go
lot
get
of time.
wood. So they would work, but they would look, right? And so then, Lindsay, Cass, and James and James typically like to just like chill around. So it was like Lindsay, Cass, and we just either like look for food, or I couldn't, or swim and or work on the shelter. Um, yeah, that's what we do. And or just like lay down and tell stories, and um yeah, that was fun.
Well, I think
Yeah.
that's. I'm very glad to hear that, and I'm wondering. I remember you saying this to me at one point. I think on social media, because I remember I was like, one of the phenomena of Survivor all time that I was always intrigued by was, I think there was only one season, one instance where I ever saw a castaway speak in another language, and
Yes.
it was Amazon where they talked in Cantonese, and I was like, why doesn't that
Uh-huh.
happen again? And I remember you said something about you did in Coco. Could you talk about that if that's true?
Yeah, I spoke with Gio in Spanish, but we were kind of told not to, because producers need to be able to follow up with what's happening, right? And so part of the strategizing that we did was in Spanish. Um, yeah, especially if people were around, I'd just like quickly switch into Spanish and be like, da 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 da, da, right? This is what we're gonna do,
Mhm.
or what do you think about this? But it was quick, it was brief. And then once we merged, there was no one else spoke Spanish. So I would speak to myself in
Didn't you
Spanish.
vote
I would
Geo
just
out?
sing to myself. Yeah, I
Sorry.
did.
Yeah. Lo siento. Sorry, buddy. Yeah, because I found that super fascinating because I was thinking, I was like, man, like you were just saying, is, I'll switch to Spanish for strategy, but like, wouldn't you be nervous? Like the people who don't speak Spanish are like, wait, are they talking strategy right now?
No, because if they said something, I'd be like, "Oh, okay, so you're shaming another language. Where are we? America?" No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. ESL is very prominent. I mean, come on, man.
Well, I told the cameraman, right? I was like, put some subtitles. Love that Jam said that.
Yeah.
But when they were like, limit your Spanish, I said, y'all can put some subtitles on.
Oh,
They don't know if
abs-
they liked that.
yeah, I guess not. They're like, how about no, you conform to what we're doing right now.
How about speak English?
Yeah, how about speak English? That's what we're going with. Listen, we have a lot of people. We're not doing the purely American thing anymore. But we are doing the pure English right now. Okay, yeah, but that's awesome.
But I'm happy to hear Jam's. Well, how's Jam? Yeah, he's some Spanish. I'm glad to hear it more
Mm,
and see it more.
absolutely. I think it's good to add to the game. I know there's a reality where like you have to kind of go to the mass. Although there are a lot of Spanish speakers. But I am glad to see it kind of mixed in because God knows they've completely ripped out the whole part of the culture of the actual place that they're going to because it's always Fiji. So they don't,
Yeah,
except for the tribe names, I guess, they don't really bother with it anymore. So it's nice to see something.
yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
And I wonder if Jam and Heidi speak Spanish, like while they're on the game, because they're both Puerto Rican. So.
that's right. I legit actually, maybe you'll get a laugh out of this. Legit. I DM'd Heidi the other day. Cause she like liked one of some post I made.
Hmm.
And I said, I was like, awesome. Congratulations. You did XYZ, whatever. Also, really important question. Are you a wrestling fan? And She's like, oh,
What'd she
she
say?
said no. She said she used to love it. But I said, okay, well, anyway, since you used to love it, you probably watched her in this era. I was like, listen, the LWO, the Latino World Order, is a thing again. And they just came out with an LWO shirt with Puerto Rican colors. And I was like, yo, here's
Oh, you need to rep
here's a
it.
screen cap for you if you're into it at all. I don't know. She probably was just like, huh, sure. But
Thanks.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it either way. But that's awesome there. All right. So actually I want to get to the final 5 part of your season. This is 5 right now. Like you had lost, you had lost immunity. Owen's got immunity. You're at that tribal. You're fighting for your life.
My life.
This is what we were talking about earlier. You're running over Jesse. You're trying to back over him. You want to do anything you can. And I have to say, based off the edit I saw, you were doing a pretty good job, I thought. Now, obviously, Jesse pulled out Janine's idol, which made it kind of irrelevant. But let's say he hadn't done that. If you can recall, what do you think? Where did you think your chances were at that moment of it being successful?
I don't think it was that successful because, um, actually, I don't know because I actually don't think I would have been successful because clearly, the exchange that Cass and I had, she was ready for me to go home. It was hard to read Gabler because I was like, do you not see that Jesse is a big threat? Like he just did that, but it seemed like Gabler also had his own plan. And I think Owen was just being following, not following, but I think Owen had his own plan to vote with the majority at that point, which the majority was, Owen, Cass, and Gabler, and I think they were going to use their numbers correctly. Um, but I'll say this, and this wasn't included, is that the entire time so we're sitting at the island, and I know I'm going home, so Cass and Owen go on the reward, and it's just Gabler, Jesse, and I, and Gabler goes and he's like, I need coconuts. So he's, chopping coconuts because he felt weak and wasn't feeling good. And I was telling Jesse, like, bro, I know it's me. I know it's me. But I'm going to do everything that I can right now to prop you up. Like, I'm going to throw you under the bus, but I'm doing it out of love. And I'm doing it because I need the jury to see that you are it. We know you're it, but I'm going to elevate your ass.
Yeah.
He was like, so you're really going to do that to me? And I was like, yes, because I'm going home. So regardless, this is for you.
Yeah.
And then he kind of hinted a little bit like, what would you say if I don't know, if I found something on here on the island? And I was like, shut up, like, stop playing with me. Like, what could you find? And in my head, I was like, what if there was an idol, what if there was an idol and he found it? And I was like, well, then play it for me, you dumbass. Like, that's literally what I told him. I was like, play it for me. And he's like, no, I'm just kidding. And I was like, okay. So we spent the rest of that afternoon building fire because I was a pretty good fire maker. And you know what's crazy is that everyone was like, Karla was so injured. If she went to fire against Jesse, I was showing him how to make fire because Sammy had taught me how to make fire in a quick way. So I knew I was very confident. So I was working with him because I knew that he would go to fire. I knew I was going home.
Yeah.
And we worked together to build fire.
Man, you were helping out your bro. Okay.
For real. Like, I loved him. I knew what was going to happen.
Exactly. It seemed like there's no part, even though, you were fighting for your life, and which, again, like you said, it was twofold. It looks like, you were fighting for your life, but if for some reason you got voted out anyway, you also were like, yeah, this dude should win the game. like
exactly.
That's a good pitch to the jury for Jesse, which I think is always advantageous when someone else does it for you in a way at certain times. So that's great that you shared that. Thank you. I had no idea that you were helping Jesse out, because definitely there's more than one or two doubters on the internet about how you factored into the end game for, like, in a really cool role, I think.
Yeah. And here's the thing is that I've talked to Jesse and Cody, obviously, since the game. And I remember Final 6 vividly. I told him we need to be a Final 3 because Cass, Owen, and Gabler are working together. If we can't be Final 3, this is the end of us. And, Cody kind of just brushed it off. And then Jesse was like, not that they brushed it off in front of me, but they just dismissed it. And then just the way that things played out, in a way, I was like, I knew it, and I would have gladly sat at the end with any mix of the 6, honestly. Preferably, I would have loved to see a Cody, Karla, Jesse, fight. That was my
That would
plan.
have been great.
But they didn't stay loyal to each other and or to the way that we were playing, which is
Absolutely.
fine.
Absolutely. I mean,
We all
actually,
had our plans.
yeah, that's the tough thing. Everyone, everyone has a plan. It's just a matter if you fit into that plan. And
Exactly.
it's disappointing to hear you say that in a way, just because as a viewer, I thought you three that you just noted, you, Jesse, and Cody were the favorites. It seemed like it to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like Cass, I'll be honest, like going into the final five, the internet, she was the internet darling. And for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get it. Uh, I just didn't see, by the time it hit the final three, I didn't see Gabler or Owen beating her just because she was in on a lot of votes. So that's why I assumed she would win. But at 5 or at 6, I thought she was maybe 4th. So actually very much I would have liked that to be the final three as well. It would have been nice.
I think everyone would have wanted that to be the final three.
God, yeah. I mean, like Jeff, we were talking about a little bit earlier. Jeff Probst did his podcast where he talked about the fire making thing with Jesse. And did you hear about that?
Yes, it's interesting because there's just so much to say about this, right? Because as Jeff was saying, right, like it was needed in a way. Like the outcome would not have changed unless Jesse would have won either the immunity challenge and or fire.
Mm-hmm.
But if there was no fire making, it would have been a 3-1 vote, easy, straight shooting, boring episode.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were just reading Jesse's tweets, and he's like, I forget what he said. He said he would have preferred it, while it has been a lifeline for others. He believes that he could have maybe, he's better at flipping votes socially, right?
Mm-hmm. That's probably true. He did. I mean, well, to be fair, he went up against Gabler in fire, and that was the fastest fire ever. So that's tough. But Jesse has been known to be pretty skilled at it.
Though at that point, though, I don't know if he just went to the final 4 without a fire. I don't know how much talking he would be able to do. I personally don't.
It's because you hyped him up, girl.
I know. It's a double-edged sword. But fire, though, unless you have a great game, right? And I think everything I said post, my season for the exit interviews is true about the way that I voted.
Mm-hmm.
I think unless you have a solid resume, unless you can name, this is the agency I had, these are the moves that I made, these are the people I brought with me, these were my shields, whatever combination of it all. If you had it great, you had control, you had intent, and you were aware,
mm-hmm.
self-aware. You don't need to go to fire. If you don't have anything but your word, just add that, add that extra.
That's some fuel to the fire. No pun intended.
Fuel, add that extra win. And I think all 3 needed that win.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, Owen wanted to go to fire. Gabler wanted to go to fire. And I think the reason why Owen didn't go into fire was because Cass didn't want Owen to get that extra win under his belt, because that could have been what could have beat, had him win the game.
Yeah, he did have some immunities under his belt, and I think there's respect that goes along with it, even if that's not like the end all be all of the game. So a few immunities, he's been scrappy from the bottom, and get a fire win, things are moving.
Oh, for sure. And I think I look back, right, and I'm like, I wish Owen would have changed his narrative a little bit more, instead of being like, oh, like, look at me, I was at the bottom. Instead, I would have been like, look at me, I've been on the bottom this entire time, and I couldn't catch a freaking break. But I'm at the top, I'm at the final 3 now. Like, if he would have projected in a way that had more confidence, I would have been like, oh, you're right, you were the underdog the entire time. But the question is, how would he have turned I wasn't on the right side of votes,
that's a tough one,
into a way that could have made it seem like I don't know. Yeah, that's the only thing that I would have been like, all right, you really have to be strategic and how to twist that to make it seem great to the jury.
Absolutely.
You could twist anything into making it seem nice. You could gaslight anyone. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah. If you're like, it's true. And that's why, like, someone like Russell Hantz will never win the game, because he doesn't know how to do that kind of thing. I mean, Russell Hantz is problematic for a lot of reasons. But one of the biggest ones is he'll never win the game of Survivor because he doesn't get the foundation of twisting things. And
that and just being nice.
Oh, he's the worst. And I'm saying this personally, and I generally am trying, as someone who's trying to be.
Did he scam you?
No. I do love football, but I'm not playing fantasy football with Russell Hands. Forget that. Like as someone who, pays attention a little bit, I want to be a little bit of a Survivor personality. Like I want to talk to find people like yourself about like a nerdy topic that we're both into, and you just happen to play the game, so you have more expertise. I want to be neutral in some ways, but I have no problem saying Russell Hands sucks. I don't plan on talking to him. And he called Carolyn the B word on Twitter. I was like, what?
Yeah, I know.
Ridiculous. But Carolyn owned him in reply and just replied with,
for sure.
She replied with all the times his torch was snuffed, which by the way, he's always lost to a female competitor, and I'm sure that drives him nuts.
And I hope it does.
Yeah, he's awful. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Russell Hands anymore. Now, at this point, get off of that loser. Yes. So actually, I had kind of a question, and I'm going to try to do rapid fire questions for you because I know we're getting kind of condensed here. So for some reason I had a thought about this. Like I thought about you kind of stuck at that final five moment. Let's say, let's go to the Noelle vote. Let's say you had the immunity idol. You knew you were getting targeted at that time. You said you asked Gabler, like, is it me? And he was like, yeah, probably. Let's say you won a reward similar to what was in Survivor Game Changers.
Who did I take?
Not who you would take, but who, like Debbie won a reward where she got food and Cochran showed up. Yeah. If you could, let's say, transport your mind. You're like, listen, I have to search the annals of Survivor. Who would I love to call upon this spirit to come sit with me to try to sort out the rest of the game, my way through? Like one legend, do you think I just want to talk this out?
Does it have to be a legend?
No. When I say legend, really, I think a lot of people are legends. So I think Nora is a legend.
Because I saw, Probst, the Dalton Ross interview. I would have wanted to have lunch with Probst. I'd love to pick his brain about it. But if it had to be a player who's played the game, because obviously he couldn't give anything away.
I'll say play player because I feel like a host is cheating.
Yeah, right. I would love some Suri. I would love Suri. Only because I found myself towards the final 7, 6, just being like, I don't really care as much about these relationships. Like, not that I don't care about the relationships, but I don't care to really try to work, certain angles. Like it is what it is at this point. But I think if I would have had Suri, her guidance around like never giving up and always trying to work a social relationship to make it, like, I think that's the inspiration that I would have needed. Yeah.
Honestly, legitimately, I didn't think about what you would say. I think outstanding answer, because I'm sure a lot, like, people put Suri as a top 10 player of all time, and she's never even won. And there's like 40 winners at this point.
I mean, yeah, especially looking at the way that she played Traders, I would just think about just not even emotional manipulation, but just she had a patience in her throughout the entire time she's played Survivor and in the Traders that I just don't have. So I would be like, how can I hold a conversation with someone in a way that makes it seem like I'm not coming off as like just trying to use them, just more social tips. I had a great social game, but how do you push and persevere when you don't care for that? Not that you don't care for that person, but don't care to try to make a wrong a right. Like, how can I try to do that?
Absolutely.
Because there were so many relationships at the 8, right? Like, Noelle was a tough relationship because we never played together and we kind of were always we never butt heads, but we just were never aligned. If I had Suri at the 8, could I go back and then work with Noelle, right? Could I go back and then work with Owen early on? What would that look like?
You think if Suri sat you down and like you laid that out, you're like, Noelle could be an avenue, but honestly, we're just always competing in our thoughts, or we're just not lined up in any way. Because I remember a very specific speech actually from Game Changers when Suri talked to Michaela, and she was like,
yes, yeah, exactly.
Like, honestly, that's all I'm thinking of right now is where she's like, listen, I to some degree, there's a racial component where we're perceived the same way because of this. And I notice particularly as I'm trying to look out for you, sometimes your facial expressions really say what you're thinking. So here's the deal, like, moving forward, like, you got to watch that. If you're tired, get untired. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, if you want to get to the next step, and it sounds like kind of what you're saying.
I feel like I needed that. I also feel like maybe I could have also pinged someone like I don't know. Freaking Wentworth. I don't know. I really needed someone to be a little bit, push me to be a little bit more savvy with the idol.
Mhm.
I look back and I think back, right? Because you're a position of power and you have an idol, you don't want to use it because why throw off a great game that you're playing just to make a move? You
Mhm.
know, I feel like it would have been read like she's good. Like, why does she need to make a big splash move right now?
Yeah.
But I look back at the seven, obviously retrospective, right? Like if I could do something over again, or where could I have done something that could have changed the game, is use my idol to save Sammy because he was loyal to me, but I just let him go, you know, and he
Mhm.
could have probably helped break me out. So I maybe someone to help me around how to strategically think about how to make a move without it being too flashy at that stage.
Absolutely. Awesome answer. I appreciate that. All right, so
Thanks.
just a quick rapid fire here that I'm terribly
Okay.
curious. Okay. This one, firstly, because I think personally, I think you're shoe in to return to the game if you ever want to. So then I guess in a returner season, let's say well, I won't limit it. In a returner season, what theme from the past would you ideally like to be a part of? In a that we've used, like a heroes versus villains, second chances, blood versus water, that kind of thing.
I would love obviously second chances. I think blood versus water would be incredible.
Mm,
Mm, yeah, I think those two over like heroes versus villains, just because I wouldn't want to be typecasted into one category when I feel like I fit both during my season.
yeah, I have to say, I think you'd be thrown into the villains tribe. I
Yes.
made a mock and I put you on the villains tribe.
Uh-huh.
But nothing personal. It's really just because a lot of times just people who are really strategic just get tossed into the villains tribe. Like Sandra was put
Hmm.
into villains tribe, and she definitely wasn't.
Yeah.
Like Pearl Islands, actually, I think she left the game pretty favorably. People liked her. I don't know, whatever. So awesome. Okay, so all right, either of those would be good. Are you sure you could play against your wife potentially?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Would it be your wife though? Actually, I presumed. I'm sorry.
That's a good question. No, yeah, I think it would be my wife. Lisa has a really cool social game. I mean, she's just so sweet and likable. Um, but it would be really nice to beat her
No.
at a
Just
game,
want
not like
oh yeah, no, like not like you're not going to turn off the camera and say like, all right, Lisa, I'm
I
mad.
know.
Um, glad you clarified.
Do not put that.
Yeah, actually, this kind of parlays into my second question potentially, which is,
Ooh.
so one of my complaints about the new era, which is only so much. Admittedly, I don't dislike it as much
Mhm.
as probably some other folks. I really miss combat challenges, physical combat challenges.
Me too. What were you gonna say?
I
Because
was
when I
Go
applied,
ahead.
I wanted to do anything. Okay, you know that one challenge where they have to get that ring? They toss it in the water
Mm-hmm.
and you have to like drag someone. I wanted to do that. I wanted to do the sumo, whatever the one with that they did at Heroes versus Villains with the mud. I
Oh
want
yeah.
anything that involved tackling people, anything that involved putting my hands on people.
Mhm.
I wanted to do that so badly, but
Absolutely.
keeping. So
Like, how cool would it have
all for
been?
it.
I think oddly, this is like the only name of a challenge I remember is sumo at sea. They always call it.
Yes.
You push the little baggies. I miss that incredibly. I was trying to rack my brain since Winners at War. I don't think there's been one challenge where there's something where one player, what they do physically can affect another player since then. Like nothing.
Yes.
And I know it's very
Yeah.
specific, but I have to parcel it that way because it's always like puzzles or it's a race usually.
Exactly. That's maybe it's obviously like I think a liability thing, right? You don't want people to get as injured, but I mean, clearly we still see injuries in medevacs.
Mhm.
But shoosh, I was here for it. That's what I included in my audition video. I was like, I want to tackle people. I was like, I love tackling people. I've been working out. Like I'm ready.
I'm glad you added that because that's also a little bit of advice for people who potentially want to win the game because Probst keeps yelling at us to apply every episode. So, a little advice, put
I
that
know
in your
I've seen
audition
that.
tape. Hey, he's like, if
Right?
if you want adventure, put in your application now. I love that.
That you're ready to fight.
um, awesome. Okay, so real quick, all-time favorite Survivor player. I've never actually heard this from you. Do you have one?
I don't have one particular, only because There's just so many. And I watched Survivor in many phases of my life.
Mm,
And I think the most prominent one was during COVID, where I just binged off 40.
mm.
And it just kind of, I mean, imagine just
You binged
consolidating
40?
40 seasons in 6 months. Yeah,
Okay. I had time during COVID. Don't get me wrong, but 40?
I binged 40 seasons in 6 months. Great. So that's why when people are like, they throw out a season name, I don't fucking know who you're talking about, but like I can tell you probably like main things. But
Mhm.
my top three has always been a Parv, Cerie, Sandra. I've been privileged and blessed to have met all three of them.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
young Carla, without knowing the game, just like as a fan, was always like Boston Rob is everything.
Hmm.
As a fan now, I get to know more of the dynamics and like the way that people have played. I still love Boston Rob, but in my top three, it's still those three women.
I think those are excellent choices. I will say, usually my favorite players, they end up being a lot of times they're like kind of quirky. One of the reasons why I love
Hmm.
Carolyn, I feel like one of those people that is like a hipster. It's like I like Green Day before everyone else did. Like I've always like I was like Carolyn's a quirky character. I don't know if she's going to be good at the game, but I just love how she is. Like one of my goofy favorite players of all time is Nora from Island of the Idols. I love her. Like when she said, I've always been kind of crazy and weird. My sister calls me normal. Uh, and when Carolyn talks, it's like Nora turned up a little bit. So I appreciate that, you sharing that with me. Yeah. So anyway, all right. So for the sake of time, we're actually going to wrap right here. I apologize. I've already taken up enough time of Carla's, but we've had some awesome chats about season 44 and a little bit on season 43. But hopefully in the future, maybe we'll chat a little bit more about this kind of stuff because I think when it comes down to it, even though you're on the show and you're very successful at playing the game, and hopefully once again,
Thank you.
we're all just kind of like nerds about this topic essentially. So every once in a while, maybe there'll be another chat one of these days. But so definitely make sure that you watch. You can subscribe to the channel. You can see more interviews in the future and watch some of the other videos that are posted here. Hopefully, we have Carla on again in the future. And yeah, it'll be a fun time. So thank you, Carla,
Thank you.
for sitting with us today.